Pre-release hype is a massive part of video game marketing. In such a competitive field, developers and publishers need to create as much noise about their product as possible in order to capture the attention of an audience with so much choice in games. Unfortunately, with such hype, it's a relatively common occurrence that the final product fails to live up to the expectations from fans, whether the marketing is too ambitious and unrealistic, or just downright misleading and inaccurate from the get-go. These games launch to very flat, if not negative, reactions. As patching games becomes more and more easy, games in turn are becoming far more streamlined. Launching with unfinished components and a multitude of bugs has become almost an expected practice from the AAA games industry. Often, meeting tight deadlines trumps QA testing for studios, resulting in products launching that barely resemble what was initially promised. The games on this list are likely to leave you as disappointed as the time your mum told you that you weren't stopping at McDonald's because she had better burgers in the freezer. Lies, I tell you, lies! I'm Kirsten from WhatCulture, and these are 10 massively hyped video games that were instantly forgotten. Number 10, HOMEFRONT: The Revolution. HOMEFRONT: The Revolution was the 2016 follow-up to HOMEFRONT. On the run-up to its release, the concept of this new entry excited players. The game was pitched as a story-driven, open-world shooter set in the United States after an invasion from North Korea. The story was to see the player character lead a resistance against the North Korean regime, which was currently dominating the country. Whilst this concept was original and intriguing, the execution was rather lackluster. There were positives to take from the game, mainly the open-world format and weapon crafting system, but the story, along with a litter of technical issues, let the game down where it mattered most. The narrative came across as lazy and cliched, guns were often unresponsive, and the game was near unplayable due to day one glitches on launch. What could have been an innovative step forward for the genre ended up landing bang centre in the generic shooter camp. Although the game was patched shortly after launching in order to fix its performance issues, it was too little, too late. Fans had already moved on, leaving HOMEFRONT: The Revolution in supermarket bargain bins all across the globe. Number 9, Star Wars: The Force Unleashed 2. The sequel to Star Wars: The Force Unleashed seemed guaranteed to be a chart-topping success. It had everything going for it. The Star Wars name, a critically acclaimed predecessor, and an army of nerds desperate to get their hands on such Jedi and Sith goodness as humanly possible. So what went wrong? The LucasArts property was perceived by many as a cash-grabbing sequel that had been rushed out simply because the first game had sold so well. The story was short and failed to be compelling, the gameplay was repetitive and unengaging. It hadn't helped that the original game had neatly wrapped up its story, making a further addition to the canon come across as unnecessary. There was fun to be had with this game, but it lived forever in the shadow of what came before. Fans didn't take long to notice that Star Wars: The Force Unleashed 2 had not been designed with the same time and care that its first entry had. It was completed in an afternoon and then swiftly forgotten about. If only gamers knew what EA had in store for future Star Wars properties, this game would likely have had a far warmer reception. Number 8, ANTHEM. The most recent release on this list, EA and BioWare's ANTHEM, has undoubtedly been the biggest gaming flop in 2019. After 10 years of development, sacrificing teams working on established titles such as Mass Effect and Dragon Age, and a marketing campaign suggesting that they'd reinvented the wheel when it came to loot shooters, ANTHEM hit the shelves in February and, for the most part, stayed there. Early reviews of this game seemed to do enough to turn interested players away. Most reported that there just didn't seem to be an awful lot to do. The story was virtually non-existent, the missions followed a repetitive travel to place, shoot the bad guys, travel back from place formula, and the gunplay was nothing to write home about. One of the biggest selling points, the mech suits, suggested we'd be flying around the map like Iron Man, using verticality and aerial combat freely as a new mechanic that would bring something unique to the genre. In reality, flying was limited to periods of around 30 seconds before requiring a recharge, and players were left with a poor attempt to cash in on Destiny's success, along with an overwhelming feeling of meh. Number 7, Watch Dogs. Ubisoft's Watch Dogs was yet another game on this list with a unique premise that could have been a defining change to its genre, this time being that of an open-world GTA-esque variety. It was advertised as a citywide crime simulator with a twist. The protagonist was a hacker and could use his skills to take over the likes of NPCs' phones, CCTV, electrical grids, and even vehicles. What was delivered, however, was a pretty bog-standard GTA clone, with hacking being no more than a gimmicky mini-game mechanic and a story that took itself far too seriously. This, combined with a noticeable graphical downgrade between its E3 debut and the final product, left fans feeling underwhelmed by the original instalment. Watch Dogs 2 took a far more light-hearted approach to its story and characters, gaining it considerably more critical success. Watch Dogs 3 also looks to be following this formula, and there's a good chance that the series could excel by following the over-the-top Saints Row method of churning out self-aware comedy titles that poke fun at the gamers and are simply there to provide a good time and a few laughs. Sadly, for the first game, it's off to the pit of obscurity. Number 6, Gears of War 4. Gears of War 4 is in no way a bad game. It's an honest successor to the original trilogy and offers a solid gameplay experience. Unfortunately, it just didn't capture the attention of gamers in the same fashion as its previous installments. Despite Microsoft trying their utmost to build excitement around this exclusive, putting a similar amount of hype behind it as they did with the originals and even bundling it with new consoles in hopes that it would shift the actual Xbox units themselves, fans just seemed uninterested. The biggest reason for this lukewarm reception is that Gears of War 4 introduced a new team of characters. Gone was Marcus Phoenix's crew of experienced soldiers who were replaced by younger, cockier, and less experienced counterparts. Phoenix was introduced partway through the game as a party member, but was not a playable character. Fanboys and girls don't often react well to change and were undoubtedly disappointed by this new direction. It's a real shame too, because those who completed it will know it had a well-written story, a further adaptation into Gears lore, and an ending which excellently set up the next sequel. Number 5, Call of Duty Ghosts. Call of Duty Ghosts should have been a sales record-breaking hit based on its title. This 2013 entry to the franchise was released on the back of the phenomenal Modern Warfare 3 and Black Ops 2, which had landed to critical acclaim over the previous 2 years. Ghosts, however, was met with far less appraisal than previous games in the series. Although it was in no way a financial failure, fans were disappointed by the lack of innovation Ghosts had provided. Despite a new title suggesting a new and original campaign, little had changed in regard to gameplay. With a title like Ghosts, players expected a more stealthy and tactical approach. Upon playing, it was quickly discovered that this was more of the run and gun formula delivered so many times before. There is an argument to be had around the if it ain't broke, don't fix it ideology, but this was the turning point where Call of Duty fatigue set in for a lot of players. With Advanced Warfare and Infinite Warfare receiving a similar reaction, Call of Duty was forced to change tactics, releasing the relatively successful World War II installment and bringing many of their fans back into the fold. Number 4, Mass Effect Andromeda. The second EA and BioWare flop on this list, 2017's Mass Effect Andromeda, really couldn't catch a break. By now, most know the story of its horrendous condition on launch. YouTube gaming channels ran amok with videos displaying hilarious bugs players had come across. It was broken, it was messy, and it was pretty damn awful. Despite carrying the Mass Effect name, Andromeda was nowhere near the standard expected by fans of the series. Even if you could overlook the many glitches and disappointing graphics, the story was also a rather droll affair. It was evident how little care had been applied to the writing of this game, with most of the development going towards fitting it to the Frostbite engine, smoothing out the combat, and supporting online play. Even with having patched a lot of the bugs Andromeda had originally released with, there was no saving this title from its lazy writing and soured reputation. The response to Andromeda resulted in EA putting all future Mass Effect planning on ice indefinitely, a crying shame for those who wanted a true successor to the original trilogy. From infamous meme to mere obscurity, Andromeda was forgotten by most within a matter of months. Number 3, Duke Nukem Forever. The production cycle for Duke Nukem Forever was a wild one. Beginning development in 1997, the follow-up to the widely successful Duke Nukem 3D took another 14 years to hit shelves, finally releasing in 2011. With such a monumental amount of time afforded to its production and such a beloved character tied to the series, this surely had to be one of the greatest games of the generation, right? Oh no. Oh god no. Duke Nukem Forever's gameplay was a generic first-person shooter experience at a time when the market was already far oversaturated by first-person shooters. Then there was the writing. It's unclear if Duke himself just hadn't aged well, or if the writers were exclusively aged between 12 and 14. Crude, sexual commentary, toilet humour, embarrassing one-liners and Easter eggs designed to insult far superior games in the genre plagued this game's 16-hour campaign. Gone was the beloved parody action hero, replaced by an arrogant man-child that nobody wanted to get behind. There aren't really any positive saving graces for Duke Nukem Forever. The game is trash, and it was treated accordingly. This one definitely deserved the panning it received, and couldn't have been left behind quickly enough. Number 2, No Man's Sky. No Man's Sky is a prime example of the damage that overhyping a video can do to one's reputation. Sean Murray couldn't wait to tell the world about his passion project. He was understandably enthusiastic about the game, which boasted 18 quintillion procedurally generated planets for players to explore. The issue was that he just blatantly lied about what the game could do. Players were promised dogfights in space, the ability to find players in the universe, colonization of entirely unique planets. What they received was a rather empty universe with repetitive gameplay revolving around landing on a planet, gathering some resources, upgrading their ship, and then heading to the next carbon copy planet to repeat the process. Now, to be fair to Mr. Murray, massive improvements have been made to No Man's Sky. New patches introduced planetary vehicles, online multiplayer, and a rewrite of the game's story. As it stands in 2019, No Man's Sky is a great game, worthy of at least some of the hype Murray had originally concocted. Unfortunately, however, the majority of players who picked it up on launch have long since moved on. Number 1, DAIKATANA. John Romero is about to make you his... This was the optimistic message portrayed on posters marketing Romero's DAIKATANA. Having been the mastermind of the 90s responsible for Doom, Wolfenstein 3D and Quake, fans had high hopes that they were indeed about to be his bitch when DAIKATANA's floppy disks were unleashed on the public. Regrettably, DAIKATANA was only destined for the bin. Due to numerous issues with its development, the game missed its target launch date in 1997, finally releasing in 2000. By this point, the game came across as dated both mechanically and graphically, with the likes of limited saves and unresponsive companions who were more of a hindrance than an aid to players. These issues led to the game performing disastrously sales-wise, with a forecasted 2.5 million units shipped only being met with around 40,000 sales by September 2000. Since DAIKATANA, Romero hasn't done an awful lot of note in regards to development. He worked on a few mobile games for the Nokia N-Gage in the early 2000s, with his last PC game, Severity, being canned partway through production. It's with a sad irony that, in the end, the only Romero made with DAIKATANA was that of himself. And that's our list. What games were you hyped about that turned out to be a bit of a letdown? Leave us a comment below and let us know. If you haven't already, click that subscribe button and check out more of our gaming videos. But for now, I've been Kirsten from WhatCulture, and I'll see you in the next one.